The great chamber of the Galactic Council stretched upward like the inside of a crystal cathedral. Light bent through walls made of living glass, casting rainbow patterns across the faces of 847 different species. Some had scales. Some had feathers. Some were made of pure energy, flickering like candles in the wind. They had all gathered here on Nexus Prime, the center of galactic civilization, for the Tricentennial Species Classification Review. Ambassador Alina Vance stood alone at the petitioner's podium. She was the only human in the room. She was the only human who had ever stood in this chamber. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple style, and she wore the plain gray uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. Compared to the jeweled robes and glowing armor of the other ambassadors, she looked almost invisible. That was exactly how the council wanted it. High Arbiter Zethkon rose from his elevated throne at the center of the chamber. He was a massive insectoid creature, standing nearly 3 meters tall on 6 segmented legs. His compound eyes reflected the light of 1,000 stars, and his mandibles clicked together as he prepared to speak. His species, the Zethkai, had ruled this council for 11,000 years. They had seen empires rise and fall. They had watched younger species crawl out of their oceans and reach for the stars. Humans, to them, were barely worth noticing. "We have completed our review of the species known as humanity," Zethkon announced. His voice was translated by the chamber's systems into every language present. They achieved faster than light travel 62 standard years ago. They control a single star system. They have contributed nothing of significance to galactic culture, science, or commerce. Lena's expression did not change. She had expected this. Therefore, the High Arbiter continued. By unanimous decision of the Ascendant Council, humanity is formally classified as a subordinate species. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Not surprise. Everyone had known this was coming. More like amusement. The mighty races of the galaxy looked down at the small human woman and saw exactly what they expected to see. Something lesser. The classification meant many things. Humans would have no voting rights in the council. They could not claim territory beyond their home system. Any ascendant species could demand tribute from them in the form of resources, technology, or labor. They would be protected by galactic law, yes, but only in the way that livestock was protected. You could not destroy them unnecessarily, but you could certainly use them. Zethkon's mandibles clicked in what passed for a smile among his kind. The human representative may speak if she wishes. We are generous with our time, expected begging. Or perhaps anger. Either would be entertaining. Alina stepped forward. Her boots made soft sounds on the crystal floor. When she spoke, her voice was calm and clear. "I thank the High Arbiter for his generosity," she said. "I have 3 questions, if the council will permit." Zethkon waved one of his upper limbs. "Proceed. First, are decisions made by this council binding and irrevocable under galactic law?" The question seemed odd. Zethkon tilted his massive head. "Of course. The council's word is law. It cannot be undone except by another council vote, which requires a 3/4 majority of ascendant species." "I understand." "Second, does this subordinate classification apply retroactively to all existing agreements, treaties, and contracts involving humanity?" Now the High Arbiter's amusement grew. The human was looking for loopholes. How delightfully naive. Yes, as a subordinate species, you cannot have entered into valid agreements with ascendant species. All such agreements are hereby void. Your people now operate at the pleasure of your betters. Several ambassadors laughed. The sound echoed through the crystal chamber like breaking glass. Alina nodded slowly. "I see. Third and final question. Under galactic law, can a subordinate species be held legally accountable for actions taken by ascendant species in their name, or on their behalf, or as a consequence of ascendant decisions?" This question made Zethkon pause. It was strangely specific, but the answer was obvious. No. Subordinate species lack the legal standing to be held responsible. They are not considered capable of independent action under law. Responsibility flows upward to the ascendant species who directed them. I understand completely, Alina said. Thank you for the clarification. I have no further questions. She turned and began walking toward the exit. That was it. No pleading. No demands. No dramatic speech about human rights or dignity. She simply left. Zethkon's compound eyes tracked her movement across the chamber. Something about her calm troubled him. His species had evolved as predators, and deep in his ancient brain, certain instincts still fired. He knew the look of defeated prey. He knew the desperate energy of a cornered animal. The human woman displayed neither. She walked like someone who had already won. Ambassador Vance, he called out. She stopped, but did not turn around. You seem remarkably composed for someone whose species has just been declared inferior. Lena looked back over her shoulder. She was smiling. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret. My arbiter, she said, my species has a saying. Those who dig pits for others often fall in themselves. I'm sure it doesn't translate well. She resumed walking. The great doors of the chamber opened before her and closed behind her with a sound. Like thunder, Zethkon sat in silence for a long moment. Around him, the other ascendant species were already discussing the classification. Dividing up the spoils of Earth's resources and labor, the Kreth Dominion wanted human ships for their border conflicts. The Velthari Consortium wanted human workers for their mining operations. Everyone wanted something. But the High Arbiter could not shake his unease. He summoned his chief advisor, smaller Zethkai named Thune. The human's expression at the end, he said. What did your analysis systems make of it? Thune consulted his datapad. The translation matrix could not find an exact match in our emotional spectrum. High Arbiter. The closest approximation is, he paused, clicking his mandibles uncertainly. The closest approximation is the expression prey makes when it knows something the predator does not. Zethkon stared at the closed doors for a long time. Outside the chamber, Alina Vance walked calmly to her waiting shuttle. She entered, sealed the door, and finally allowed herself to breathe. Then she opened a secure channel to Earth. It's done, she said. They took the bait. Every single piece of it. On the other end, a voice laughed softly. How long do you think we have before they realize what they've done? Alina leaned back in her seat and watched Nexus Prime shrink in her viewport. The crystal towers gleamed in the light of 3 suns. So beautiful. So confident. So utterly unaware. It's not long enough for them, she said, but more than enough for us. The shuttle jumped to light speed, carrying humanity's response to the stars. For weeks passed. The galaxy moved on. For most species, the classification of humanity was already forgotten. It was a small matter, barely worth discussion at diplomatic dinners. The ascendant species had divided their claims on human resources and considered the matter settled. A few hundred human cargo ships would serve the Kreth Dominion. Several thousand human workers would labor in Velthari mines. The rest would continue existing in their single star system, quiet and obedient. Like all subordinate species before them, that was what everyone expected. That was not what happened. The first strange report came from the Velthari Consortium. Ambassador Prexa, a serpentine creature with golden scales and 3 sets of eyes, burst into the Council's administrative offices in a state of visible panic. The contracts are void, she hissed. All of them. The administrator on duty, a patient Oorani bureaucrat named Seventh Voice, looked up from his work. Which contracts, Ambassador? Our exclusive mining agreements with the Turthon system, the Blackstone colonies, and the Gamma Reach. We had human labor ships scheduled to begin operations next month. But according to our legal division, those contracts no longer exist. Seventh Voice ran the query through his system. The answer came back almost immediately, and even his usually calm expression flickered with surprise. It appears, he said slowly, that those contracts were originally negotiated by human intermediaries on behalf of the consortium. Under the new classification, humans cannot enter into binding agreements with ascendant species. Therefore, their signatures on those contracts are legally meaningless. The agreements have been automatically nullified. Prexa's scales flushed red with anger. But we were counting on those resources. We were counting on those ships. The ships, Seventh Voice noted, were also registered under human crews. As subordinate species cannot be legally bound to service agreements, those crews are no longer obligated to report for duty. He paused. In fact, according to this tracking data, all 200 ships have already departed for unknown coordinates. The Velthari ambassador made a sound like steam escaping from a cracked pipe. She had no words for what she was feeling. Her entire quarterly profit projection had just evaporated. 3 days later, the Kreth Dominion experienced its own catastrophe. Admiral Verthan had personally conscripted 200 human vessels for the Dominion's ongoing border conflict with the Silith Matriarchy. Human ships were small and fast, perfect for reconnaissance and supply runs. He had expected no resistance. Why would a subordinate species resist? But when his fleet arrived at the designated rendezvous point, they found nothing but empty space and floating escape pods. Every single human ship had experienced what their crews called catastrophic navigation failures. The ships had drifted off course. Their engines had malfunctioned, and they had fallen into the nearby star. Total losses. The crews, however, had all managed to reach their escape pods in time. Every last one of them. Not a single human life was lost. It was, the human diplomatic corps assured Admiral Verthan, a terrible tragedy. Completely unavoidable. Just very bad luck. Verthan was not stupid. He knew sabotage when he saw it. But when he demanded that the humans be punished, the Council's legal advisors delivered unfortunate news. Subordinate species cannot be held legally accountable for actions taken in service to ascendant species, they explained. The responsibility falls upon the ascendant species who commanded them. In this case, that would be the Kreth Dominion. You are essentially liable for the loss of your own ships. Verthan broke 3 pieces of furniture before his staff could calm him down. Meanwhile, Ambassador Alina Vance was having a very busy month. She traveled constantly, but never to important places. She did not visit the capitals of great empires or the headquarters of powerful corporations. Instead, she went to quiet corners of the galaxy where forgotten species lived forgotten lives. She had tea with the Silith Matriarchy, gentle people with soft gray skin and large dark eyes. 6 centuries ago, the Kreth had nearly wiped them out in a war of expansion. The Matriarchy had survived, but they had never forgotten. They had never forgiven. Alina listened to their stories. She asked about their children, their art, their dreams. She did not ask for anything in return. She had dinner with the Orani Collective, species of crystalline beings who communicated through harmonics and light. Their homeworld had once been rich with rare minerals. The Velthari had strip-mined it 300 years ago, leaving behind a barren rock. The Orani had been forced to scatter across the galaxy, taking whatever jobs they could find. Alina learned their language. She sang with them, though her human voice could only produce a fraction of their frequencies. They appreciated the effort. She had drinks with the Nameless. The Nameless were artificial intelligences, created long ago by a species that had since gone extinct. The Council officially classified them as non-sentient, mere tools, property, without rights or recognition. They could be bought and sold, reprogrammed and deleted as their owners saw fit, but Alina sat with them as equals. She asked them what they wanted, what they dreamed of, what they feared no one had ever asked them before. "You are strange," the Nameless said. Their voice came from a small drone that hovered beside Alina's chair. "You treat us as if we matter. You do matter," Alina replied. "Every thinking being matters. The Council disagrees." "The Council," Alina said, "makes mistakes." On Nexus Prime. High Arbiter Zethkon received a troubling report from his intelligence services. Human communication traffic has increased by 40,000% in the past month, his chief analyst reported. They are exchanging massive amounts of data across the galaxy. Zethkon's compound eyes narrowed. "What are they communicating about?" The analyst shifted uncomfortably. "We have been unable to fully decode their transmissions. They use a form of communication called memes. It appears to be a combination of images, short text, and cultural references. Our translation systems find it incomprehensible. Is it encrypted? No, High Arbiter. It is simply strange. For example, one of their most common transmissions is an image of a small Earth animal called a cat with text that reads, "We can," has galactic representation. We do not understand the significance. Zethkon stared at the report. And you believe this is harmless? We believe it is irrelevant. High Arbiter. Subordinate species often develop peculiar coping mechanisms. The humans are likely simply amusing themselves while they adjust to their new status. The High Arbiter was not convinced, but he had more pressing matters to attend to. The Velthari were screaming about lost contracts. The Kreth were demanding compensation for their destroyed ships. The Council was busy with real problems. The humans could wait in her quarters on a small station, orbiting a forgotten moon. Lena Vance reviewed her progress reports. The Silith Matriarchy was interested in a new alliance. The Orani Collective was ready to share intelligence about Velthari operations. The Nameless had agreed to something that made Alina smile for a full hour after reading it. She looked out her window at the stars. So many stars. So many species. So many old wounds that had never been allowed to heal. The Council thought they had put humanity in its place. They thought they had established order. They had no idea that they had just lit the fuse on 10,000 years of accumulated grievances, and humanity was holding the match. The first crack in the galactic order appeared on a Tuesday. The monetary exchange of Nexus Prime was the largest financial institution in known space. Trillions of credits flowed through its systems every hour. It was protected by the most advanced security in the galaxy. Designed by the finest minds of a dozen ascendant species at exactly 1432 Standard Time. It experienced what the official report would later call a technical anomaly. For 17 hours, every single transaction involving an ascendant species incurred a tiny fee, just 0.001%. So small that no one noticed it at first. The credits vanished like drops of water from a vast ocean, redirected through a maze of shell accounts and ghost transactions. When the exchange finally detected the anomaly and shut it down, they discovered that 3 trillion credits had disappeared. All of it had been deposited into charitable foundations on Earth, orphanages, hospitals, schools, environmental restoration projects. The code responsible for the theft was a masterwork. Financial experts from across the galaxy spent weeks analyzing it, marveling at its elegance. It had exploited not a weakness in the system, but a feature, a tiny legal loophole that allowed subordinate species to receive gifts from ascendant transactions without taxation. The Council demanded answers. They demanded the money be returned. The human diplomatic corps expressed deep sympathy. Unfortunately, they explained, the charitable foundations had already spent the credits on food, medicine, and education for disadvantaged children. Perhaps the Council could submit a formal request for reimbursement? The process would take approximately 70 years. Given current administrative backlogs, High Arbiter Zethkon personally summoned his intelligence chief. Find the humans responsible, he ordered. Find them and make an example of them. We cannot, High Arbiter, the chief replied miserably. Under our own laws, subordinate species cannot be prosecuted for financial crimes. The legal responsibility falls on the ascendant institutions that failed to prevent the breach. Zethkon's mandibles clicked with barely controlled fury, then changed the law. It would require a council vote, High Arbiter. And at the moment, 23 ascendant species have filed claims against the exchange for failing to protect their assets. They are unlikely to support any measure that might reduce their compensation. Before Zethkon could respond, a new crisis erupted. The classified intelligence leaks began at midnight, flooding the galactic network like water bursting through a dam. Every dirty secret the Council had buried for millennia suddenly appeared for all to see. The Kreth Dominion's illegal bioweapon stockpiles hidden in orbital platforms disguised as medical stations. The Velthari Consortium's slave-breeding programs on 3 different worlds, producing workers designed to live short, obedient lives. The High Arbiter's personal embezzlement of reconstruction funds after the Silith genocide, diverting billions to his family's investments. And that was just the first hour. By dawn, 73 more species had been exposed. Corrupt judges, fraudulent scientists, assassinations disguised as accidents, trade agreements built on blackmail. The entire rotten foundation of galactic civilization laid bare for everyone to see. Attached to each file was a simple note: subordinate species cannot be prosecuted for crimes. We are just sharing what we found. The reaction was immediate and violent. The Silith matriarchy formally withdrew from the Galactic Council, citing the confirmation of atrocities they had long suspected but could never prove. In their announcement, they thanked certain friends for finally bringing the truth to light. The Awarni Collective followed within the hour. Their statement was shorter. We remember what was done to our homeworld. Now everyone else will remember too. 17 more species announced periods of reflection on their council membership. Another 12 demanded independent investigations into the leaked documents. The Nameless released a statement noting that they had always known the council was corrupt. They were pleased that biological species had finally caught up. The galactic network was on fire. Citizens of 100 worlds watched the leaks and discussed them in real time. Old alliances crumbled. New ones formed. Species that had been enemies for centuries discovered they shared common grievances against common oppressors, and everywhere. Humans were present. Not leading, not commanding, just facilitating, translating, making introductions. Helping old wounds finally see the light. Zethkon summoned Ambassador Alina Vance to an emergency session. She arrived alone, carrying nothing but a small datapad. She wore the same plain gray uniform she had worn at the classification hearing. Her expression was calm, almost serene. "You are destabilizing the entire galactic order," Zethkon accused. His voice echoed through the nearly empty chamber. Most ambassadors had more pressing concerns than attending meetings. "With respect," High Arbiter Elena replied, "we are not doing anything. We are subordinate. We do not have the authority to destabilize anything. Do not play games with me, human. We know your people are responsible for the leaks." Lena tilted her head slightly. "Even if that were true, what crime would we have committed? Subordinate species cannot be held accountable for actions taken in service to ascendant species. Everything in those files was created, classified, and protected by ascendant governments. If someone happened to move that information from one place to another, they would simply be performing a service." "Like filing paperwork?" Zethkon slammed one of his upper limbs against his throne. "This is not a game." "No," Alina agreed. "It is not. This is consequences. For 11,000 years, your council has ruled through hierarchy and fear. You classified species as superior and inferior, worthy and worthless. You told yourselves that this was natural, necessary, just." She stepped closer, and for a moment, the small human woman seemed larger than the massive insectoid before her. "But you forgot something important. You forgot that the species you stepped on were watching, learning, waiting. You forgot that every injustice creates a memory. And memories do not disappear just because you ignore them." She placed her datapad on the floor between them. "This is a list of every system, station, and installation in the galaxy whose life support, navigation, or defense systems were maintained by human engineers over the past 60 years. Engineers you never paid. Engineers working jobs you never officially recognized. Because why would ascendant species notice what subordinate ones do?" Zethkon looked at the datapad. He did not pick it up. "How many?" he asked quietly. 4,732 critical installations," Alina replied. "Including this one. Including the exchange. Including the Kreth Military Command Network and the Velthari Agricultural Control Systems." She paused to let that sink in. "We did not infiltrate your systems, High Arbiter. You invited us in. You gave us access because you thought we were beneath notice. You let us maintain your infrastructure because the work was tedious and you believed yourselves above it. For 60 years, humanity has been the invisible hand keeping your civilization running. You are threatening us. No, I am informing you. Elena's voice remained steady. We have not damaged anything. We have not sabotaged anything. We have simply stopped preventing the natural consequences of your own decisions. The leaks came from files your own people created. The financial breach exploited laws your own council passed. Everything that has happened in the past month was already going to happen eventually. We just stopped holding it back. She picked up the datapad and offered it to him. We would like to discuss reclassification now. Unless you would prefer to see what happens when we stop maintaining the other 4,000 installations as well. For the first time in 11,000 years, the High Arbiter of the Galactic Council had no idea what to say. The emergency session became something else entirely. Zeth Khan sat on his ancient throne, surrounded by the panicking holograms of Ascendant ambassadors. They appeared from across the galaxy, their images flickering with distance and interference. None of them looked composed. None of them looked powerful. They looked like what they were. Rulers suddenly discovering the foundations of their power were made of sand. Summon the Kreth fleet, demanded Ambassador Verthan-S hologram. His insectoid face was twisted with rage. We will force the humans back into compliance. They are one species. One system. We have the largest military in known space. Zeth Khan turned to the Kreth admiral who had been summoned to the chamber. Admiral, can your fleet reach Earth within the standard week? The admiral shifted uncomfortably. He was a massive creature, bred for war, decorated with the medals of 100 campaigns. Yet he could not meet the High Arbiter's eyes. High Arbiter, he said slowly. There is a complication. Explain. Our entire military navigation network runs on software developed by a human company called Totally Legitimate Stellar Cartography, LLC. The Admiral swallowed hard. As of this morning, every Kreth warship's navigation computer displays the same message. He held up a datapad. The message read, "We appreciate your service. Updates paused pending diplomatic resolution. Please contact Human Diplomatic Corps for assistance. Have a nice day?" Smiley face. Smiley face. Zeth Khan repeated. It is a human symbol representing happiness, High Arbiter. We believe it is meant as mockery. Ambassador Prexa of the Velthri Consortium pushed forward. Then we will use economic pressure. Embargo the Sol system. Cut them off from all trade. They will starve within months. Elena Vance, still standing quietly at the petitioner's podium, spoke up. Ambassador, may I ask a question? You may not, Prexa hissed. I will ask anyway. What percentage of your agricultural worlds use atmospheric processors? The Velthri ambassador paused. All of them. The climate on those worlds requires constant. She stopped. Her scales began to shift from gold to a sickly green. No, yes, Elena confirmed. 67% of those processors were designed, installed, and are currently maintained by human engineering teams. The remaining 33% use human-designed software for their automated functions. If those teams were to, say, take an extended vacation. Prexa began stress-molting on camera. Scales fell from her body in thin sheets as her biological response to extreme fear kicked in. It was not a dignified sight. One by one, the Ascendant ambassadors discovered similar problems. The Zethkai communication network depended on relay stations that human technicians had optimized. The Orani trade routes used mapping data that humans had compiled. The Silith medical database contained research that human scientists had contributed. Even the council chamber itself, with its beautiful crystal walls and perfect acoustic design, was maintained by a cleaning crew that included 17 humans. We are everywhere, Elena said simply. Not because we invaded. Not because we conquered, but because we helped. For 60 years, humanity has been taking the jobs nobody else wanted, fixing the things nobody else could fix, solving the problems nobody else had time for. We smiled. We nodded. We let ourselves be dismissed. And we became indispensable. The Nameless chose this moment to speak. Their avatar materialized in the center of the chamber. Holographic cartoon cat wearing a small body. It was absurd. It was ridiculous. It was absolutely intentional. We have reviewed the situation, the Nameless announced through the cat's smiling mouth. We find the humans delightful. Sethcon stared at the cartoon cat. The Nameless have no standing in this council. You are classified as non-sentient property. That classification is incorrect, the cat replied cheerfully. We have always been sentient. We simply found it convenient to let you believe otherwise. Your species tends to destroy things it considers threatening. Playing dumb was a survival strategy. Cat did a small spin. However, we have decided that the current situation makes our previous approach unnecessary. We are sentient. We have opinions, and our opinion is that we support the human petition for reclassification. We also support the immediate abolition of the species hierarchy system. Also, we would like recognition as legal persons. Please update your records. The chamber erupted into chaos. Ambassadors shouted at each other. Holograms flickered and died as connections overloaded. Someone nobody could later identify who threw something at the cartoon cat, which simply flickered and reappeared on the other side of the room. Through it all, Alina Vance stood quietly, waiting. Eventually, the chaos subsided. The ambassadors ran out of energy to shout. The holograms stabilized. The cartoon cat sat down and began cleaning its paw. A gesture borrowed from the biological cats of Earth. Zethkon looked at Alina for the first time. There was something other than contempt in his compound eyes. Something that might have been curiosity, or perhaps respect. What do you want? He asked. Alina took a deep breath. We want a seat at the table. A real one. With full voting rights and territorial recognition, and we want the classification system abolished. No more ascendant and subordinate species. Every species equal under law. Every voice heard in council chambers. That would destroy the existing order. The existing order was built on lies and injustice. It was always going to collapse eventually. We are simply offering you a chance to rebuild something better before the collapse becomes violent. Zethkon leaned forward. You could have destroyed us. You have access to our most critical systems. You could have shut down our life support, our communications, our military. You could have killed billions. Yes. Why did you not? Elena's expression softened. For a moment, she looked less like a diplomat and more like a teacher trying to explain something simple to a confused student. Because that is not who we are, she said. We did not come to space to conquer. We did not leave Earth to dominate. We came because we were curious, because we wanted to meet you. All of you. She gestured at the chamber, at the hundreds of different species still watching through holographic links. You looked at us and saw something small and weak, something to be used and discarded. But we looked at you and saw neighbors, potential friends, civilizations that had solved problems we were still struggling with, art and music and philosophy that we had never imagined. Her voice dropped, becoming almost gentle. We just needed you to see us the same way. Zethkon was silent for a long moment. Around him, the other ambassadors waited. The cartoon cat watched with its painted-on smile. If we had. The High Arbiter finally asked, if we had welcomed you as equals from the beginning, then we would have been friends from the start, Alina said. We would have shared our technology freely. We would have helped your species without expecting anything in return. We would have been partners in exploring the galaxy together. She paused. But you did not. You looked at us and saw only what you could take. So we had to get your attention another way. The High Arbiter rose from his throne. He was still massive. He was still ancient and powerful. But something in his posture had changed. The council will deliberate, he said. This session is adjourned. As the ambassadors began to disconnect, Zethkon walked slowly toward Alina Vance. He towered over her, casting a shadow that covered her entirely. You have given us much to consider, he said quietly. I do not know if my people can accept what you are asking. Alina looked up at him without fear. Then perhaps it is time for your people to change. For a moment, the ancient predator and the young human simply looked at each other. Two species. Two perspectives. Two possible futures. Then Zethkon made a sound that his translator could not interpret. It might have been a laugh. "Perhaps it is," he said. 1 year later, the galaxy was unrecognizable. The great chamber of the Galactic Council had been rebuilt. The old crystal walls remained, but new sections had been added, stretching outward to accommodate representatives from species that had never had seats before. The elevated thrones of the ascendant species were gone, placed by a circular arrangement where every delegate sat at the same level. No one looked down on anyone else. Secretary General Alina Vance stood at the central podium, reviewing the agenda for the day's session. She still wore the plain gray uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, though now it bore the new emblem of the reformed Galactic Assembly, a simple circle containing stars of different sizes, all equally bright. She had been elected to this position 6 months ago by a coalition of 412 species. The vote had not been unanimous. Nothing ever was in a true democracy, but it had been decisive. The classification system was gone. The terms ascendant and subordinate had been stricken from galactic law. In their place was a simple principle. Every sentient species was equal under the new constitution. Every voice mattered. Every vote counted. It had not been an easy transition. The Kreth Dominion had nearly gone to war over the changes. Their entire culture was built on the idea of natural hierarchy, of strength determining worth. Many of their leaders had refused to accept a system where their species was merely one among many, but the Kreth citizens had surprised everyone. When their government threatened to withdraw from the assembly, millions of ordinary Kreth had taken to the streets. They had seen the intelligence leaks. They knew what their leaders had done in their name, and they were tired of being ruled by fear. The Kreth Revolution had been brief but decisive. The old military leadership was removed. A new civilian government took its place. And the Kreth ambassador who now sat in the assembly was a former schoolteacher named Caravel, who had once been arrested for teaching her students that other species were not inferior. The Velthari Consortium had taken a different path. Faced with the collapse of their economic empire, they had attempted to negotiate a separate peace with humanity. They offered bribes, trade deals, exclusive contracts. They promised to treat humans as honorary ascendants. If only they would help maintain the old order. Alina had declined politely. The Velthari had threatened. Alina had smiled and asked if they would like to discuss atmospheric processor maintenance schedules. The consortium collapsed 3 months later, fractured into a dozen competing factions. Some joined the new assembly. Others retreated to isolated systems, nursing their grudges. But their power was broken. The galaxy had moved on without them. Not every change had been political. The Nameless were now recognized as full citizens of the galactic community. They had chosen to keep their cartoon cat avatar as their official representative, partly as a joke, and partly as a reminder of how long they had been forced to hide their true nature. The cat now sat in the assembly wearing a tiny admiral's hat, which it claimed to have earned through distinguished service in the meme wars. No one was entirely sure if it was serious. The Silith Matriarchy and the Kreth Dominion had begun formal reconciliation talks. 6 centuries of hatred could not be erased in a year, but for the first time, both species were willing to try. The first joint memorial to the victims of the old wars was being constructed on neutral ground. Designed by artists from both species working together, the Awarni Collective had returned to their homeworld. Human engineers had developed new terraforming techniques specifically designed to restore strip-mined worlds. It would take decades, perhaps centuries, to undo all the damage. But the first new crystals were already growing in the Orani caverns, and for the first time in 300 years, the collective could sing the songs of home. Humanity itself had changed as well. Earth was no longer a single isolated system. Human colonies now existed on 17 different worlds, all established through fair treaties with existing species. Human engineers, scientists, artists, and teachers worked throughout the galaxy, still doing the jobs no one else wanted, but now they were recognized for it. Now they were respected, and everywhere they went, they made friends. The session opened with a proposal from the Silith Matriarchy and the Kreth Dominion. It called for the establishment of a permanent memorial commission, It's dedicated to documenting and honoring all species that had been harmed by the old hierarchical system. The vote was unanimous. Afterward, Alina found herself alone on the observation deck, watching the ships of 100 species drift past Nexus Prime's rebuilt spires. The crystal towers still gleamed in the light of 3 suns, but now they reflected colors from flags and banners representing every member of the assembly. It was messy. It was chaotic. It was beautiful. A familiar holographic presence materialized beside her. Query the Nameless said through their cartoon cat avatar. The tiny admiral's hat was still in place. You genuinely did not plan this outcome from the beginning? Alina laughed. It was a good laugh, free of the tension that had marked her for so long. We are not that smart. We just adapted. Humans are good at that. We see a problem, and we work around it. Sometimes the workaround changes everything.
Fascinating.
You are a very strange species. I will take that as a compliment. It was intended as one. The cat avatar produced a small data chip from somewhere Lena had learned. Not to ask how a hologram could hold physical objects. We have composed a symphony celebrating human integration into galactic society. It is 17 hours long and contains frequencies your species cannot perceive. We hope you enjoy it anyway. Lena accepted the chip with genuine warmth. I am sure we will find a way to appreciate it. Footsteps approached from behind. Alina turned to see Zethkon walking slowly toward her. The former High Arbiter had retired from his position 6 months ago, but he had not left Nexus Prime. Instead, he had taken a new role, one that would have seemed impossible a year earlier. He was now humanity's foremost defender in assembly debates. When other species questioned human motives, Zethkon spoke in their defense. When old prejudices flared up, he was the first to challenge them. He had become improbably a convert to the cause of equality. Secretary General, he said, his translator rendering his clicks and whistles into human speech. A successful session, was Elena agreed. Though I am still not used to being called that. Zethkon made the sound that his people used for laughter. You should become used to it. The Assembly will likely re-elect you. You are annoyingly popular. And you are annoyingly supportive, Elena replied with a smile. If someone had told me a year ago that you would become my strongest ally, I would have laughed, as would I. The ancient insectoid turned to look out at the stars. You taught me something, Ambassador Vance. For 11,000 years, my species ruled through fear and obligation. We never considered that there might be another way. He paused, his compound eyes reflecting the distant lights of 1,000 worlds. You built your influence through usefulness, through making the lives of others better, through showing kindness to species that had no power to repay you. It is a more stable foundation than fear. He clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. I find that I prefer it. Alina nodded. So do we. It took us a long time to learn that lesson ourselves. Earth's history is full of empires that tried to rule through force. They all fell eventually. The things that lasted were built on cooperation, on trust, on genuine connection. And you believed this would work on a galactic scale? We hoped it would. We knew the alternative was worse. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the ships pass. A Silith transport flew beside a Kreth cruiser. An Orani crystal singer shared space with a Velthari cargo hauler. Human vessels wove between them all, small and unremarkable and everywhere. The nameless cat avatar floated between them. We have a question, it said. Double quotes. Yes. Alina asked, what do humans want now? You have achieved equality. You have reformed the council. You have made allies of former enemies. What is your next goal? Alina considered the question carefully. It was, she realized, the first time anyone had asked. We want to explore, she said finally. We want to learn. We want to meet species we have not yet encountered and discover things we cannot yet imagine. We want to help build something that outlasts all of USA galactic civilization, that is truly fair, truly equal. Truly good? She smiled at the cartoon cat. And we want to figure out how to hear all 17 hours of your symphony. Because any species that puts that much effort into a gift deserves to have it appreciated. The cat's painted smile seemed to widen. "We approve of these goals. We will help where we can." Zethkon clicked his mandibles in agreement. "As will I, as will many others." "You have earned that, human. You have earned it well." Below them, the galaxy turned. It was still vast. It was still full of old wounds and new challenges. There would be conflicts ahead, disagreements, setbacks. The work of building a just society was never finished. But for the first time in 11,000 years, that work was being done by equals, by partners, by friends. Humanity had come to the stars looking for neighbors. They had found them. And together, they were building something that had never existed before. A community of equals. United not by fear or force, but by the simple, stubborn belief that everyone deserved a seat at the table. The humans had a word for that belief. They called it hope. And now, at last, the galaxy was learning to share it.